Scunthorpe United have lost 4-0 at home to Exeter City this afternoon. Love it.
Open wide for some soccer!
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. And if you're listening online at some point later on, it's great to have you. We are delighted for the second time to finish off what was a wonderful interview with Joe, who has joined us from the west coast of America. His location is redacted, but you can see the Seattle Needle out the back. Joe, it's a pleasure to see you. How are you?
Great. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, thank you. And Bruce is here as always, resplendent in his Made in Grimsby shirt. How's everything with you?
It's good, mate. Thank you. It's not been long, has it, since we saw each other?
No, I'm not.
I've spent more time with you than I do with my wife these days.
Yeah, I'm not used to playing back-to-back games at the moment. I can see why Paul Hurst moans about them every now and then.
Yeah, you've done your calf walking to the PC.
Yeah, exactly. You got to think about this stuff. I'm not match fit for 2 games a week. Joe, how's everything been with you? We've got a lot of questions in, but it'd be good to sort of catch up. And you were introducing us to your Irish setter, who's keeping you company.
Correct. Yeah, everything's been great. No complaints. Life goes on. Everything is good. So
I am delighted. It is brilliant. Bruce, can you remember where we were? Because all I remember is Joe siphoning petrol out of a car.
I've actually going to go back a little bit for a start because, we got up to we just enjoyed the celebrations of the 79-80 Division 3 title. But today, Joe, I bet you can't guess where you were 42 years ago today.
42 years.
I'll tell you where you were. You were at Reading and you'd flown there.
Oh, yeah.
And you scored as well.
Yes,
It's funnily enough, it's the anniversary of that today.
Oh, really?
I turned the program over this morning, and it's and then it was there was some interesting stories came out. I bet you didn't fly to away games many times in your British career, did you?
No, one time only. Other than going with the Republic of Ireland, that was the only time, and it was a great experience for us. I don't think. Back in those days, people never even thought about doing it. So it was quite a novel idea at the time for us to do it.
Do you remember how it came about? I mean, that's really random, but what brought it on?
Well, I think what brought it on was Alec King. Alec King was our commercial manager back then, and he was very innovative with his ideas and what have you. And he came up with this idea. Why don't we fly down and we'll take some fans with us? So we were going to fly from Kermington, and the first one filled up. Then they put a second one up, and I think that filled up. And I think they put a third one, and that filled up. And there was so it was players and directors were going on one flight, and the fans were going to go on the other two. Well, apparently 2 people wanted to go that weren't able to buy tickets. So Mick McGarry, who was one of our directors at the time, might have even been our vice chairman at the time, flew his own plane down there and gave up 2 seats so this other couple could go to the game. And that was part of the adventure. I remember that game vividly, because that game was pretty important to us. The year before, we'd been top of the 4th division, and we'd gone down there. And this may have been a part of the reason as well. We went down on the day of the game, and we came back the same night, and we got beat 4-0. And I think that, that was the difference kind of between us winning and losing the division in the finish. But so then George and Alec and probably Dave Dowse all got their heads together and started going, well, how can we how can we make this better? And that idea came up, and it turned out to be a fantastic idea. Instead of being a 6 or 7 hour bus journey down there, it was probably an hour and a half's flight, and it was great. It was, I think there was a lot of things in it. The novelty of it was great. Just the feeling for us as players to be traveling like that to an away game, when you're top of the league and you feel like you're being treated that way. So I think that was it. That was a huge thing. I always felt that if we could get a result out of that in that game, that was going to be a pivotal game for us. And turned out that we got a tie out of it, and we managed to go on and win the division.
That is a brilliant story. I mean, we've had occasions in the last 10 years where the players have gone in their own cars, let alone flown to away games. But like you say,
now.
back then, that must have been, a big thing. And like you say, because it was such a novelty, the fans obviously got on board. So yeah, I just saw that today, and I knew the story about the flying, and I just thought we'd sort of just throw that one in. But we got last time, like I say, we got promoted, and I had a little look at the 4 seasons that you had after that with the club, and it was either one or the other, wasn't it? Every season, there was no, it was rarely boring. You were either up near the top of the league or you were down near the bottom.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of the way it was. The irony of it was that we started off the first season in the second division. We started off fairly poorly. I mean, in our first 7 games, I think we only won 1 game. Tied, or maybe 1-2, tied 1. What was it? I was looking. It's we 1-2, tied 6, and lost 8. And I remember us going to West Ham, and it was a match of the day game, and we were. I didn't know this stat at the time, but the commentator was talking about it, and he said, "Well, Grimsby were promoted last year as Division 3 champions, but in this season they've been the lowest goal scorers in the second division up to this point, and our position in the table reflected that with the results we had. And actually at West Ham that day we played pretty well. We went 2 goals down, and then I scored from a corner, got cleared to the edge of the box. I volleyed it with my left foot. It went in. And unfortunately, Drinky was offside. And in this day and age, it would have been a goal because he wasn't interfering with play. But the goal was called back. And then we scored. John Stone scored from Mike Brawley free kick. He followed the rebound up, and we ended up losing 2-1. So that was kind of... the irony is that we could have tied the game 2-2 and ended up not getting anything out of it. But after that game, we picked up and we started getting a lot of results, a lot of draws, to be honest. And I think ultimately what finished us in that season was our start and our finish. And our finish, the last 7 games, we won 1 game out of that, tied 2 and lost 4 or something like that. And so that was kind of the sandwich in between, the meat, the sandwich. We had a really good run. We had some really good results, but a lot of draws. Our home form was really good, without being dominant goal wise. I think we scored 23 goals, which was the fewest amongst the top 10. But then we only gave up 10 goals at home, and there was only one team better than us in that department in the top 10, and that was Blackburn, who finished 4th in the league. and they lost out on goal difference. So they had 7 goals against, we had 10. We scored more goals than them. And of course, 5 of those goals that we gave up were against West Ham at home. So we had a really good record at home defensively. Away from home, we gave up the most goals in the top 10. And we were right there goals-wise with most of the teams in the top 10, but it was the difference between the goals for and goals against. We only scored 32. We gave up 32 goals away from home. I think we scored 22 or 23, and that was the difference. When you look back on it, if we could have turned 4 of those games into wins, 4 or 5 of those games into wins, then we would have been automatically promoted, probably in second place. So it was, but we gave ourselves a little bit too much to do from the start. We did a similar thing in the 3rd division the previous year. We started okay, then had a spell in just after where we struggled a little bit. And then after Gillingham, we seemed to pick up some good results, and we got on a roll. And in the 3rd division, we never looked back. We just kept going and going and going. But of course, 2nd division is a whole different kettle of fish. You got much better players playing there, and you know it was expected that it would be tough for us, but to make a go of it in consecutive years and get yourselves in the frame a couple of times in the top 3 was great, or right up there anyway. But maybe it was all for the better, because a step, if you get promoted to the 1st division as it was back then, that's a huge step. And you need, as has been seen in the past, too many teams have gone up and come straight back down. You need time to consolidate. And that's what we had. Next 2 seasons, we started off well and then faded and did enough. I mean, I think it came down to the last half dozen games to make sure that we were safe to be in the 2nd division for the next year. And but also, I think around that time, a lot of us had played a lot of games by this stage. The 3rd division relegation season, I'd played 58, 59 games, something like that. The 1st 4th division season, I played probably about 60. 2nd one, about 60. The 3rd division championship year was another 59, 60 game season. And then the 2nd division. So by the time we kind of got to the end of the 2nd division, I think there was a lot of tired people. That's a lot of seasons to play a lot of games in and be, competitive as we were all the way. I mean, in those seasons, outside of being relegated in the 3rd division season, the next 4 seasons were all up around the top of the leagues. So you were always going for something. There was nothing like, there were midway through the season. It wasn't like, oh well, we have nothing to play for, so we can coast from here. We were always in the thick of things, and after a while, that pays its price. Takes a toll on people, especially as we didn't have a very big squad.
Yeah, you can never switch off from Easter onwards. There was always something to play. You either, like you say, you were either fighting at one end or the other, weren't you? But,
well, yeah, and for us, it was always over Easter. It was always 3 games over Easter. We played Good Friday, Easter Saturday, and Easter Monday, and that was a tradition at Grimsby because the fishermen were always in port on Good Friday, so we would always play on Good Friday. Or so I heard that was the reason. But so you're playing 3 games in 4 days, and now they're whining about playing 2 games a week, and we were doing it 3 and 4 days. So it was you know, it was, and that's why Easter kind of was a litmus test for how the division was going to go or how teams were going to go, because you could either push on from there or you could take a dive from there. And we were fortunate enough that the couple of times that we did it, that we did well. And we got, I think we got some good results on the second division, or on the third division championship year and the fourth division promotion year. I think we took 5 out of 6 points on both occasions. So that gave us a boost, and I'm sure it gave some of the other teams a little bit of are these guys ever going to lose? When are they going to start dropping things? So.
Brilliant. I bet it's easy to look, but like you say, you look now and the pitches are a lot better, aren't they, as well now?
Man, but I love to play on those things. Those pitches are better than the carpet in my house.
Was that game against QPR at the end of the season where you had all 4 seasons in a game? Was that the strangest conditions you ever played in? Again?
Well, you know, ironically enough, we talked the last time. Our last game of the season at home against Doncaster, when Jack Lewis scored a hat-trick and Doncaster beat us 4-3, we had a similar day on that day, but not as bad as the QPR one, because the QPR game started in bright sunshine. And then I watched the tape of it, or the CD of it, since then. And I mean, I'm watching guys. The downpour that came flooded the pitch, and I think if it hadn't been the last game of the season, it might have been called off, just because, I mean, guys were launching themselves from 10 yards away into tackles because they're just sliding along, and it was quite something to experience. But the Doncaster game was similar. I mean, hailstones the size of marbles. It felt like we're coming down and whacking you, and then it changed, and the weather got, you know, a little bit better. So it was all interesting stuff.
Oh, that game. Like, there's one incident where I think, surprise, Bob Cumming and somebody else, and they sort of slid in tandem on somebody, and they went for about 20 yards.
Yeah, I think that might have been me and Bob doing that one. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It was that was always something that was always fun to do when you played in wet conditions. First thing you always had to do was get a slide tackle in, because once you got wet, you were fine. Otherwise, you'd be dancing around it for 90 minutes, and you can't have that happening. So that was always my first goal on a wet day, was to get a slide tackle in as quickly as possible.
It used to be the best thing when you were a kid, didn't it? Out with your mates when it was raining. And
yeah.
Are you coming in, and I used to love the fact that you went home absolutely filthy and soaking wet, and your mum would make you'd have to get undressed outside.
Yeah.
Oh, here you go. Is this it? There you are.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can pull it up.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Like you say, you wouldn't look at. I mean, that would just be abandoned. Like you say, the fact that it's the last game of the season, I think, is the only thing. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what what the groundsman would be making of that if it was a normal? Frank Bridge would be out on the pitch, wouldn't he, pulling you all off?
Yeah, that was something.
But,
Man, that was interesting.
But yeah, then you like you say, you had the two, and it was full of the seasons. When you look back at the seasons, even the ones where you struggled, they were usually full of, like you say, either we sort of did it in spurts, didn't we? It was either winning runs or losing runs, or because one of the seasons, I think it was that game where the QPR sort of result kept you up. You started the season on fire, and with about 8 weeks of the season left, you were up and around sort of 6th or 7th, and ended up nearly getting relegated.
Yeah. I mean, we started off great. I think we won at Carlisle, we won at Middlesbrough. We had a real good start, and then we went to I think it was Leicester we went to, and we may have even been top of the league at that point on the day we went to Leicester, and we lost there 2-0, and then we lost the next one, and I forget who the next one was against, but I remember us losing 2 in a row, and then we kind of went on a little bit of a couple of draws and a win and a loss and a draw, and then getting back in, but eventually, going down to nearly the wire. I think that in that, I'm not sure if it was that season, the Leicester season, that we avoided relegation. One of the seasons when we were struggling, and I think it might have been the next season. But it was one of those. Cardiff were there, and I remember one of their players coming to me at the end of the game when we lost 1-0 to them. We were already safe at this stage, and they needed to win. And he said, "I nearly called you to say, hey, would you talk to your players about throwing the game for us, and we'll give you our bonus for it." I laughed at him and I said, "No, I wouldn't have." So, but yeah, it was just like one of those. It was just a joke kind of thing, because we'd gotten safe the previous game or a couple of games before that. So it was, and they were, hanging on for dear life.
Should we do a couple of the questions, Alex, that we've had?
Yeah, feel free to. So, I mean, the one that's coming straight away was Andrew Niels has asked what the hell was Bob Cummings like when he was training. So that's always a nice one to know. Actually,
Bob saved it all for a game. I mean, the things that people think about him and what have you. I mean, he would never launch himself into tackles like we saw earlier in training. I mean, you don't hurt your own players in training. They're too important for games. So, he was a good trainer. He was a great trainer. I mean, all the boys were. And there was never any stuff that went on. I don't even remember actually any kind of, I don't even remember a verbal disagreement between guys, let alone getting into a fight or something like that because somebody tackled you too hard or what have you. So no, Bob was as good as gold, in training, just working on the stuff that even in the games, you let people have balls that were 50-50, sometimes they're 60-40, because it's no good you being out injured as well, kind of thing. So no, he was never out of control. And to be honest, in games, he was rarely out of control. I mean, there might be one or two times where he'd go and maybe he wanted to wind the crowd up to get them into the game, and he would go into something that would be like that. But I mean, it was always planned. I think in his mind, it was always planned that it was going to be a bit of a wind up.
But the park, even especially now, just seems quite small. Did it seem, especially in the tunnel, did it always feel quite cramped and congested? And I can imagine it could get quite fiery in there with the opposition at times, could it not?
You know what?
Maybe not enough room to swing a punch.
Yeah, no, never. I mean, very rarely in those days. I mean, I think a lot of times the opposition went out first to warm up. And I mean, in our day, I remember we never went on the field before a game other than you go out 5 or 10 minutes beforehand and you're doing your warm up, and then referee blows the whistle, captains come in, you do the toss up, you go and play. And it wasn't until George went with Mick McGarry up to Scotland to Celtic Park to watch Celtic play Juventus or somebody like that in a European Cup match. And there were it was a bad night, so the teams weren't allowed on the field beforehand to train, kind of do their thing before the kickoff. And Juventus were in the hallway between the locker rooms, sprinting up and down and doing their warm up before they got onto the field. And this was probably half an hour, 35 minutes before the kickoff, maybe even longer. And then George came back to us and he said, "Hey," he said, "I've just seen this up in Glasgow at Parkhead." He said, "Juventus players are out there." He said, "The sweat was pouring off them when they went into the dressing room before the game and then came out, and they were flying as soon as they came out." He said, "We're going to do that from now on." So from then on, we always went out at 2:30 and warmed up, and then 2:50 we'd come back in, change into your whatever strip we were wearing and what have you, and then final words and out, and away you went, and that was it.
You used to come on, at home games, you used to come on the pitch, didn't you, and come into the centre circle around that time, and you'd wave to all the fans.
Yeah,
I think that's a great thing, and people have said before that would be something that was quite straightforward to bring back. And it's on all the videos, the town players, and in those days you'd have a few fans on the pitch at the end shaking hands and congratulating players and stuff.
Yeah, and again that was George's idea to do that, and he just came to me one day and he said, "Hey," he said, I want you to do this. Take the lads out, take them out to the centre circle, and at the spot in the centre circle, make a right turn, and then I want you guys to just turn and wave to the crowd on all four sides." And first time the crowd did it, they went bananas, with it. They'd never seen anything like it before. So, and then it became kind of a tradition for us to do that.
Sounds a cracking idea to me. I mean, probably not last season. That would have been an entertaining thing to have seen, Bruce. If would have allowed rock bottom players to come in and
take the applause of the fans. Yeah, they'd be better off in the empty stadiums during COVID, wouldn't they?
I mean, they'd have got the same reception. I mean, there's quite a few. I mean, obviously, there's quite a lot that came in. Pizza fight. So a gentleman called Logan came in. Actually, this was before. He said, my stepdad John Stone played with Joe for a few years. He always spoke in the highest regard for Joe's ability on the pitch and loved a good tackle, I'm told. I guess, but I mean, thanks very much for bringing it in, Logan. I don't know if you remember John Stone.
Oh, Stoney, Stoney came into our team and he made such a huge difference when he came in. He brought a whole different dynamic to the right back position. He was a very quiet man, but he was as hard as nails, and he could play. And he was a wonderful addition for us, and we were kind of spoiled a little bit because we had him in training with us for about for a few months. He was at Darlington, and he and his wife, I think her parents had a post office in Immingham or somewhere like that, and she was helping out. She was kind of postmaster there, or taking over as a postmaster there. So John was training with us, and it was actually the time of the fourth division promotion year. John played on that Darlington team that we beat 7-2, and he came and he was with us all the time, and so it was kind of a free trial really, without him having to play for us, when he was training with us every day. And then I think it was an easy decision for John and George to make, to buy him, to bring him in, and he came in, and like I said, he made a huge difference in the right back position. Not that the other guys weren't good players, but John was a step above that. He was just he was a good solid player.
The first time I ever met John we got to know him quite well was when he had Apollo Sports after he'd retired in town. Ian and a guy called Andy, I think. And we used to go in there quite a lot in those days before you shopped on the internet or Sports Direct took over the world of sports shops. Because there were quite a few former Town players, weren't there? That it wasn't just a video game. There was quite a few sports shops with Harry Wayman, and there were quite a few.
Yeah, Harry had his shop on Freeman Street. I'd never been inside John's place. I hadn't done that one. And I mean, I know a few guys that, throughout football that had sports shops and did their things with that. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tough game though. It's tough business to make a living in. It really is. And in this day and age, it's like, are there any more sports shops left individually owned?
Not many independent ones, sadly, are there?
Yeah.
No, Norris Rubberman went early 90s, did he, Bruce?
That was Norris the Rubberman was just really odd because it sold Wellington boots, it sold Town kits, it was like a hardware store with sports stuff in it.
Right.
It was crazy, but yeah, that shut down, didn't it? Was it Pasture Street?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, opposite the old antique shop, Chris Slee's or whatever wasn't it?
We used to go on the corner there before your time, but Woods, that used to be on the corner of Hainton Avenue, was the first place we ever used to go to for videos before we got a video shop in Waltham.
Oh,
used to go into town to get. Yeah. I couldn't reach the top shelf, but my dad used to pass them to me.
Jim Connor wanted to know a basic, more generic question, I guess, Joe. What was your greatest moment playing for Town, and what was the best seller at the video shop?
Well, that my best moment playing for Town. I mean, there were so many, but I really think the third division championship final day of the season against Sheffield United, when we won the championship, that's so special because, well, I mean, it tells you how special it was because it hadn't been done for, when was the last time that we won the third division North? In the 50s, I think. There wasn't even a United third division back then. So it hadn't been done for so long, and it still hasn't been done to this day. So, I mean, that was really special. And I mean, you're in the game. You're in the game to be successful and, if possible, win things. And when you win things, that makes a difference. Like I see sometimes that we won the what is the Football League trophy at Blundell Park against Wimbledon. This was the forerunner to what it has become now. They get to play at Wembley. We got to play at Blundell Park. And that iteration of the Football League trophy was one season. I think that was the old Group Cup, and then it moved on to something else, and then it evolved over the years, and it made it more important and more important. But people kind of overlooked that as well, that we won that. But I would say that Sheffield United, any time that you gain promotion and you've had a successful season like that, those are the moments that stand out in your mind. Scoring the goal that got us promoted with Northampton was another big one for me. Big memory, that is just, it stays with you forever because of not just what it meant to you, but what it meant to the people of the towns, Grimsby and Cleethorpes. That was huge.
I was just laughing. You didn't even get to go to Scotland in the Anglo-Scottish Cup.
I know.
three games against English opposition, and we obviously didn't qualify for the.
Yeah, the Scottish teams pulled out of it. It's like,
Brilliant.
yeah, that's the way it goes, isn't it? Yeah.
That's good. That the Scottish team's pulled out of the Anglo-Scottish Cup. Dan Humphreys asked, just a bit sort of random, thrown in the middle of it. But have you heard about Dave Moore's charity bike ride that he's doing later in the season?
I have not.
Right. He and some friends, including Dave Smith, the current commercial manager and former player,
Yeah.
They're cycling to Eastleigh for the last game of the season, 250 miles. Does that surprise you with Dave?
No, that does not surprise me with Dave one bit. Does not surprise me at all.
It would if he wore trousers.
Yeah, I think when he went down his course to become a physio, they must have had some rule in place that everybody could only wear shorts, because those guys have got to be crazy. I mean, you look at all those physios and they're all in shorts for the most part. I'm going, are you really serious?
He still is. I think he should come over to you, Joe, at some point and experience some sort of Northwest American blizzards, and he'd still be out there in.
I bet he would. I bet he would.
They ought to send him up to Alaska on one of those National Geographic documentaries, chopping trees, logging in somewhere in the wilderness, in the snow, in his shorts.
Well, rumours are he was the one that was administering the magic sponge to Shackleton in shorts and t-shirts, wasn't it?
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me one bit.
There's quite a few. I mean, there's quite a lot. I mean, that's one that I'm quite interested in. Andrew Nyers asked what was the travelling support like there? It's something that probably we're more recognised for now than we were. I don't know if that was the case at the time. Bruce might slap me on the back of the wrist for saying that.
Well, I mean, we always had decent travelling support, but it would have been, it would have been in the hundreds. But also I remember, when there'd be one bus going. I remember we played at Rochdale one night. We tried to play the game twice prior to that, and it had been postponed. So we get to Rochdale, and we walk into the dressing room, and in the middle of the dressing room, there's like a hole in the roof where you have a skylight, and it had corrugated plastic that would let the light in the daytime. But the corrugated plastic was only a quarter of the way on top and a quarter of the way on the bottom. And in between, there was snow coming into the dressing room. And the dressing room was nearly half an inch to an inch deep in water. So all the guys are standing on the benches to get changed. We go out in the pitch, and the referee, I said that George Flint was the referee, and I said, George, we're not going to play in this. And the ball won't even roll in this thing. And he said, George said, if we don't play it tonight, he said, we'd be playing it in July. So he said, we're going to have to play it. So we get out, and the last thing John Newman said to us before we went out is, he said, do not pass the ball back. No back passes tonight. Play everything. If you're in trouble, put it out, play forward. I don't care. Don't back pass. We're about 5 minutes in, and the ball, Dave Moore decides to turn around and pass the ball back to Batchy. Sticks in the water. Batchy comes out to get it. The Rochdale guy gets to it first, and in the back of the net. And we went 2-0 down. And then just before halftime, we scored, and we made it 2-1, I think. And we came out, and after we came out at halftime, the crowd had been behind the goals that we were defending on one end of the field. When we come out in the second half, they had moved all the way around and were behind the goals that we were defending in the second half. So the only time I've ever seen it, the whole end changed at halftime. We ended up winning the game 5-2, but that was something. And that was one bus full of people. There was probably about 50 people there. Then there was days we went to Chesterfield, and we'd take 8, 9, 10,000 people with us. You know, the day we went to Anfield, I think there was 20,000 people went with us. Now, those were unusual for us in those days. The day we got promoted at Mansfield, there was a huge contingent of town fans there. So, and at Barnsley, when we played Barnsley on Easter Saturday that year. So we used to take some fans with us, but not, I don't think quite in the numbers, especially for where the club is now in the fifth tier of English football, to be taking 1,000, 1,500 people to away games is amazing, really.
Yeah,
I think around that.
We had about 500 at Weymouth at the weekend, didn't we? That's quite nice.
Yeah.
Got a bit of a suntan.
How far is Weymouth?
Oh, 350 miles, I reckon, something like that.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah.
But around that time,
now better to do on a Saturday.
Sorry, Alex. Around that time, Joe, the crowds started to drop off anyway in football in general, didn't they? With the sort of hooliganism and the bans and it was because in 82, 83, I've just had a look. We only played, Alex, in the second division, which was Championship. We played in front of more than 10,000, only 9 times all season. And when you think of the Championship now, there's teams 30,000, 25,000, and only 9 times with all the big clubs that were in there. You go to places like Cardiff, wouldn't you? And there'd be 4,000 people there.
Yeah. I mean, that was the way it was back then. I remember, way back when I was at Leicester in 1970, we were playing Manchester United at Filbert Street, and the game had finished, and I was walking over to get back to my digs on the Narborough Road, and I turned as you come out Filbert Street, you had to walk along the side of the canal to get onto Narborough Road, and as I came out around the corner, there were wall to wall, terraced houses in England, right? You have the two footpaths and you have a street with enough room for 2 cars. Man United fans from wall to wall walking down the street. And there were thousands of them. And I thought I was going to die. I really did. And I just turned and ran back to the ground as quickly as I could to get somewhere safe. But we had some lads that were in digs with us. One of them was on trial. One was our landlord's son. And they went over to Nottingham to watch Leicester City play Forest. And they were walking across Trent Bridge and they got beaten up by Leicester fans. They didn't even know who they were Leicester fans. So back in those days, it was ridiculous. And it did stop people from going to games. It did. There were things that happened. The Millwall had their F Troop group of guys that if they weren't playing at home, they would rent a Littlewoods van, moving van, and they would go to somewhere and just cause havoc there and have a day out with it. So it did affect the crowds. A lot of people wouldn't take their wives and children to games because it was just too dangerous.
Was the your final season at Town, was that the closest you came, do you think, to getting promoted? That when you finished 5th?
Yeah. And at that time, the other side to what we were very fortunate in that we had a terrific group of young guys that came together at the same time. And a lot of them blossomed in that environment and really overachieved in a lot of ways. To go from the 4th division to the near promotion in the second division with the same group of guys essentially was a huge achievement. But at some point, you've got to strengthen it. You've got to bring in players that are of the quality of the division that you're in. You know, the first season, the fourth division, the lads learned on the job, and the second season, they knew what we were up against, and they were ready for it. We get into the third division, and we start off, you know, not. We're trying to find our feet in the third division. Eventually, we do, and we roll on with that. We get Kevin Kilmore, I think, was probably the only one that came in outside of Stoney from the year before, and then came in and made, you know, we got him in. And then we get into the second division, and we really didn't add anybody that would be considered an outstanding player in the second division. You know, you need somebody that's experienced in that, or a couple of people that are experienced in it. And towards the end, we got Trevor Wymark, who was a huge signing for us, and did a brilliant job for us. But I think we still needed a little bit more, and I think it tells in the, you know, in the amount of goals that we were scoring. You know, better defenses, better quality players, both offensively and defensively, and not to mention the middle of the park. So we needed strengthening, and we did it in kind of bits and bobs. Like the money, I don't think the money was there for us to do it. You know, when we were in the third division, you know, Chesterfield had signed Bill Green, they'd signed Alan Birch, then they signed my good buddy Phil Bonneman, and all these guys had signed for about like 80 to 150 grand. We spent 60 grand on Kevin Kilmore, and that was it. You know, and that's not to say that they had Jeff Salmon as well, the former Stoke player that they got there. I mean, Ernie Moss up front. They had paid a lot of money for their team. I mean, Gillingham, who just avoided relegation that year and were one of the favourites to get promoted from the third division, spent nearly 200,000 on their team, and they've just avoided relegation. We spent 60 grand on ours, and we won the championship. So that's testament to the players that we had in their ability to learn on the job and to adjust and adapt. But at some point, the higher you get, you have to add more quality to it.
Do you think that not the players, but do you think that the club then and perhaps the board got unbelievably lucky, really, then that crop of young local talent came through at the time, and we probably wouldn't have had any of that success if they hadn't have, you know, your Wilkinsons, your Lunds, your Kev Moores, Fordy, if they hadn't have all come through. Do you think none of that would probably have happened with the board as it was then? Well,
I don't think it's much to do with the board. I think it's just to do with what you have available, the resources that you have available to you. I mean, Town were never really a rich club. You know, we were never floating in money. So to get people to spend money was very, very difficult. You know, they experienced, you know, a couple of relegations. There was a couple of times when we were re-elected to the league and what have you, that before my time and what have you. And then, you know, all of a sudden Laurie Mack comes in and you have Dave and all those guys, Stuart Gray and Jack and those guys at Bracey, all those guys that were Matt Tees, you know, you're lucky enough to get guys like this at the same time, and they gel and they give you something special. And I think that's what we had. If we hadn't had those guys, And if we hadn't had the manager and the coaches that were prepared to give the younger guys a chance, which is a gamble in itself, because they're gambling with their jobs when they make those decisions. So it would, it might never have happened, you know. And the relegation may have been a blessing in disguise, because then you look at it, you know, when you look at everything over what's happened in the past year and what have you, and you look at the state of people's contracts and what have you, and you go, okay, maybe it's time we made a change here, and the change has got to be for youth, and it was, I think it was pure luck, because all those guys came together was just destiny, I think. Because we certainly would not have been able to buy the quality of the players that we had in the team at that point. You know, you're not going to be able to buy a Drinky. He'd cost you, you know, even as a young guy, he would have cost you probably 50, 60 grand. 40 would have cost you the same or more. You know, you have Kev Moore, you know, and we were lucky. We picked up guys like Dean Crombie and Clive Whittington on either for practically nothing or free transfers. Bob Mitchell on a free transfer. We had Bobby come in. We got him for nothing. How much would you have to pay for him to put that kind of a team together? Mick Brawley cost us $5 grand from Bristol City. Gary Little, $8 grand from Leeds, I think. It was $8 grand. So it was just something special that happened at that time. And the club would not have been able to buy players, that many players, to make it all work. I don't think.
And after you left, it's sort of that team. Mike Lyons came in, didn't he? And sadly that team sort of broke up within a season or two, didn't it? And they were, you know, it was by the time sort of we got relegated a couple of years later, it had all sort of changed absolutely beyond recognition.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's what happens. You know, we've seen it happen to so many different clubs. You know, you change everything to your way of doing things, and you upset the apple cart to the degree where you just take away everything that the club stands for, you know, and had stood for, I should say. And, you know, but it kind of goes the same way. You come in and you try to implement your ideas. You don't include the people that are there, and try to bring them on board or incorporate them into what you're doing, and then it backfires, and you end up paying for it with your job. So it really was unfortunate that happened. You know, I thank my lucky stars sometimes, because at around that time, just after Mick Lyons got fired, I went for an interview for the job, and I didn't get it. And to this day, I thank God for it, because I had no clue what I would have been walking into with the players. You know, Bobby Roberts, who I played with at Leicester City, Bobby came in, and when he came in, I think he had 10 first-team players. And if it hadn't been for his contacts, he would not have been able to get any players in, because there was no money there.
He didn't really have a chance, did he?
I'm going to ask with brutal honesty and naivety. It's before me. Mick Lyons is constantly noted as the worst manager ever that Town has had. Am I correct in saying that, Bruce?
No, people of a certain generation would definitely say that, and we've had some dross since.
that's very true. I mean, that's a question that's for you as well, Bruce. Like, was he that bad, Joe? What was it that happened, and And is it even true, Bruce? I mean, he can't be worse than Holloway, can he?
Well, no. Well, I think there's a couple of things at play here. Mick Lyons was a terrific player at Everton and at Sheffield Wednesday. I think what happened was that he got the job based on him being probably a player manager and on his reputation as a player. And I think it was the wrong job at the wrong time for him. He needed to cut his teeth at a lower level and then make his way up to a second division club. Certainly a second division club that had been used to being given it a go to be a top half the table team. So I think inexperience has a little bit to do with that. You come in and you think you have all your ideas, and when you put them into place, they don't quite turn out the way you expect them to. And that happens. I mean, that happens to more people than happened to Mick Lyons. So I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't be throwing him under the bus and saying, that he was that bad. Because he might have been very, very good if he had done his apprenticeship maybe somewhere else and worked his way up to it. But you're getting into I can't remember around that time anybody else being a player manager in the second division.
We were we offered the job before him to Phil Neal, didn't we? It would have been, I don't know whether he would have been a player manager or whether he would have retired from playing, because he was obviously coming from Liverpool. But it's all, you don't know what would have happened in hindsight now, do you?
No. Well, I mean, and that's the thing with it. I know that Ray Graydon, who had been a very successful coach at Oxford, had been the coach with Oxford when they went into the first division. I think may have even been the coach there when they won the League Cup. I think they won. They didn't offer it to him. And he had a wealth of experience as a coach at all levels of the game. So, I mean, it's a little bit like, Jack Charlton and Bob Paisley in the running for the Republic of Ireland national job, and they turn Bob down and give it to Jack. Well, turns out Jack did a great job with it, So a lot of people.
He found lots of Irish lads, didn't he?
Yeah. So it's so a lot of it can be just luck, a lot of it is just being in the right place at the right time with the right group of people. I think that I'm not sure how the whole dynamic worked after I left, but I know that Trevor left and then Chris left and went to Southampton. And Trevor, I think, left about the same time. Muro, I'm not sure when Muro left, but there were a lot of guys that were that would just like go at the same time, and I really don't know what the deal was there, but I do remember I did read an article where John Fraser, who I really liked and really respected as a football man, said he didn't like Mick Lyons' methods. It was different than what he had been used to with so many different managers, and just he didn't care for him that much. I saw somewhere else where we had players at the club that were experienced, that were good players, that were captain of the club, and then he signed somebody on a free and brought him in and was going to make him club captain or team captain. So the one thing I do know in this game is that you stand and fall by the decisions you make and the little bit of the rub of the green that you need along the way. That certainly makes a huge difference to you.
You talk about leaving, which sort of brings us on quite nicely to Dan Humphrey asks, how did the move to the USA come about? And you've partially probably answered that you probably left at the right time, actually. But he said, was it a year or two early in hindsight? I think he probably means from your age and and how you were still playing, perhaps.
Yeah. You know, to be honest with you, I had plenty of opportunities to stay in England and play. Tommy Docherty had just gone to Wolves, and I went to meet him at Molineux, and they offered me a contract there. I went up to Middlesbrough, met with Willie Madron, who was the manager at Middlesbrough at the time. Played with the club for a number of years. Went to Derby. Arthur Cox, who had tried to sign me at Chesterfield and at Newcastle, who really liked me and wanted me to go to Derby. Then Port Vale wanted me as a player coach. John Rudge was the manager there, and he wanted me to come in there and be his assistant. And one day I was in the video shop and the phone rang, and Freddie Goodwin, who was one of the original Busby Babes, and then played for Leeds United, and then managed Birmingham City, Brighton and Birmingham City, and discovered Trevor Francis. Phone rings. Hey, Joe, it's Freddie Goodwin. Oh, hi, Freddie. How are you? Would you be interested in coming to America? Yeah, I would. Okay, I'll call you next week. And he hung up. So he calls me and he says, hey, he said, do you want to come over for a visit? And I said, yeah. I'd never been to America, so I thought, yeah, I'll go and have a look at it. Didn't have a clue where Tacoma was. Came over, and I thought, hey, it's a free vacation. I can go over there. So I came over, I was still recovering from the ankle injury that I got at Sheffield Wednesday, which finished my season. And but by that time it was back and it was good, or recovering well. So I played in a couple of kick-arounds with the guys that were here in Tacoma, and called me into the office and offered me a contract, and I just went, oh. I mean, it was just way more than anybody else was going to be paying you. I mean, 2-3 times better than you'd be making here. So that made the decision to go to the US.
And here you are.
And there I am. Yeah, and it was originally I was going to come for 2 years, finish up here and go back and get in with the club and get into coaching somewhere. And that one got sidetracked. So
are many of your family over there now? Have you got a big family over there?
Well, my brother lives here. The rest of my family, 4 sisters and a brother, live in Ireland still. I have 3 daughters. One that lives here. One is down in San Antonio. The youngest one has just became a mother. So we have a granddaughter and a grandson by my eldest daughter. And she's down in San Antonio, Texas. Middle daughter is living in Ireland. So we're kind of spread around a little bit.
There's lots of waters. Lots of waters everywhere.
There's a few of us around. That's for sure.
Are you still coming back for the reunion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Looking
I think
forward to it.
Bob's coming as well, isn't he?
Yes, I heard he is coming. Yeah. Which is
looking forward to that. Do you you were around the club sort of? I think we said last time you were on that you were around sort of at the transition from that sort of early to mid 70s team. So I'm guessing you know quite a few of the lads that will be coming from the sort of 71, 72 as well.
I would do, yeah.
It should be a good night.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great night. I mean, it's so sad, that there's 4 of our guys gone already. And there's a few of their guys gone. And some of the lads are kind of suffering a little bit health-wise. So it's going to be good to see them. And you know,
Yeah, but, you know, I think, like you say, it'll be an emotional night for lots of reasons.
yes.
But
well,
should we whittle through a couple more questions, Alex, before we go and let Joe go? Or have we done them all, do you think?
Yeah, no problem. I'll just have a quick look. I'll try and pull it back up because I was just having a read of something about Tacoma. Right, so Peter Anderson just been very polite and say, look, about a dozen more questions, but they can wait till next visit at Blundell Park, although that might put you off ever going again. All the best from Peter. Andrew Niles said, what do you recall at training at various schools around the area? Great for community relations. How did it go for the players? Met you at Lindsay School. God, Lindsay School isn't even there now. Dave Wary asked, have you kept any mementos from your playing careers, Joe? 1980s Division 3 title medal, Irish cap, shirt, photos. I guess you must have a fair few locked away somewhere.
Yeah, I do actually. They were in it. All of them were in a drawer somewhere at one point, and my wife decided that she was going to buy a cabinet and put them all in there. So finally, they're back out in the light again, and the cabinet, just above the cabinet, sits a Grimsby Town jersey that's in a frame, and it has, the club sent it to me for my 50th birthday, and it has Waters 50 on it, and that sits right above that. I still have the championship medal. I still have the Group Cup medal. Still have all the things that we got in and around the time of the promotions and the what have you. Still got the Player of the Year awards that I won. The 4th Division Player of the Year award that I won. The PFA medals that for the divisional teams that I was on. So yeah, I still have all that stuff. I have my Irish caps, my Irish jerseys. I have the Brazilian number 10 that I got when I went to Brazil with the Republic on my first trip, and Rivellino wore number 10 that day, so I managed to get that jersey.
That'd be worth a few quid.
I would say it probably is. And for years I didn't have it because it was in my mother's house back in Limerick, and all of a sudden it turned out somewhere, and it was hidden somewhere in the attic back there. So I finally got it back, and I have it in the cabinet downstairs with the other stuff that's there. I have some stuff that I won playing with Tacoma Stars and what have you. So yeah, I still have a few things lying around, but you know, I don't think I've seen. They're in the basement, so, and I haven't been down to the basement for I don't know how long. So
that must be quite good. Brilliant. I mean, I can't ask any more. What about you, Bruce?
No, I think we've covered most of these off. I just wanted to make sure we'd asked most of them because people have been kind enough to send them in. No, I think we've done.
Joe, it's been a pleasure. I can't wait to see you when you come back over to Blundell Park. There's got to be a nice fish meal waiting for you when you get here.
You know, every Friday night I think about fish and chips.
Are you bringing your good lady with you, or is it a lads trip?
No, it's a lads trip. She was going to come the last time, but unfortunately this time she's a school teacher, so she's still working, so she won't be able to get the time off this time to do it. So I'm hoping to get her back at some point over there to have a look at the place. I keep telling her about it. So
I'm not sure we can compete with the view out of your window, though, Joe. Cleethorpes is lovely, but you have to be the right light.
Yeah, yeah.
Night.
I don't know. It's kind of it's funny that there's a couple that live down the street from me, and they got talking to me one day, and it was saying, asking me, and we got talking about soccer, and I said, I played for Grimsby Town in England, and they said, oh, you did? He says, oh, we've been to Cleethorpes. I went, no way, you have not. And they went, yeah, we've been to Cleethorpes. We've actually been to Cleethorpes a couple of times. And I said, really? For why? And she says, the Kite Festival.
Oh, yeah, said, of course.
And I went, yeah. I said, they do have a Kite Festival there. They said, yeah. She said, we went there for a number of years. And then she started talking about the fish and chip shops. And the one, what was the takeout one that was right there opposite the Dolphin? So you had the Dolphin on one corner, and
on Alexandra Road on the front, there's Seaway, or there's Ernie Beckett's. What's
the square there in Cleethorpes where the Dolphin used to be?
The Marketplace.
Marketplace, yeah, Marketplace, and then
Steele's.
Well, you had Steele's, that was a restaurant, and then Ernie Beckett's, was it?
Yeah,
across the street?
Yeah.
So she says, oh, I have an apron from Ernie Beckett's, and because we used to win there, we loved the fish and chips. And then the next time I saw her, she brings me out two table mats, solid table mats, with pictures of Ernie Beckett's fish and chip shop on them. And she's here. I want you to have those in your memory for Cleethorpes.
I mean, the idea that if you'd have just walked in to their house one day because you were borrowing a cup of sugar, and then hung up on the side in the kitchen is an Ernie Beckett's apron, you'd have been calling the police, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but I mean, what's the chances of something like that happening? You know, and they only live like 5 doors down from me. You know,
world famous.
Yeah, so Cleethorpes is a lot better known than we think, lads. Yeah. So.
Yeah, absolutely. They've just landed the biggest cod, I think was the story today, wasn't it, Bruce?
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Haddock should be haddock.
Yeah, well, I think they've bought it for those with the more southern taste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the one thing I miss here. You cannot get haddock and chips here anywhere.
Don't worry, it's the same.
Your boots in a few weeks.
Yeah.
It's the same down south, Joe. If I ever ask for haddock, the look of disappointment and annoyance on the chip shop owner's face as they disappear into the back. Yeah.
It's funny. I was in Boston. I was in Boston a few years ago for a friend's wedding, and in Boston you can get haddock and chips everywhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In the north, up northwest, you have cod, or you have halibut. That's what you get here. So I'm looking forward to. Remember it back in Steele's in the old day when you go there. We used to go there for dinner after a match on a Saturday night sometimes, and you go and get haddock and chips. And you get haddock and a half. And it was just,
You'll be texting the wife, won't you, telling her how much you're missing her while you sat there with a fish and chips and a nice pint.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
You'll have our doe-eyed chairman following you around. So I'll pay for it. Don't you worry about it.
Brilliant, Joe. Thanks ever so much.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's lovely to meet you, Joe, and it's nice to put a face to the name and see it. My only regret is I wasn't around to see it.
Oh well, you know what? You didn't miss much. I'd
swap it for Weymouth away. Don't you worry about that.
I bet you would.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Joe, it's been amazing.
Right.
We hope
Boys,
you.
look forward to seeing you when I come back.
Yeah, see you
Yeah,
soon.
I will make my way up. See you soon, Joe. Thank you very much.
Take care, lads. Bye bye.
Bye.